Today I'm going to be editing this photo by Ramin on Instagram. If you guys want to check him out, his stuff will be in the description. And if you guys want to edit this photo for yourself, the link to that will also be in the description. So something interesting about this photo that's going to make it challenging to edit is it starts off with very little contrast, very little color. So we're going to have to add a lot of that in. So starting, I already cropped it in and then used Adobe Standard, just like what I like to use. I'm going to bring up the whites and bring down the blacks just for a starting point with a little bit more contrast. Maybe bring up the shadows a little bit, bring up the highlights a little bit as well. Just eyeing this to see what looks good and what looks like a base image I can use. For the temp and tint sliders, I'm gonna want to make this like a bluish image. So we'll see if we want to add the blue here or we want to add it later. I think I'm gonna add it in the curves, so I'm gonna make this like pretty flat, pretty white balanced. So move the temp slider more towards the yellow. As for tint, I don't see much needed. I'll just move it around a little bit to see what I like. And I think how it is fine, so we'll just leave it like that. Next, in the curves, we're going to start to add some contrast with the S curve. I think that gives the image a nice pop. Definitely. And then we're going to take this and add it to the RGB channels, red, green, and blue channels, and then reset this initial channel. Make some final tweaks and especially add a fade into the blacks and into the whites. And then see if we want to change the contrast anymore. I kind of like a lot of contrast. I think that looks good. Then we're going to go into these channels, the color channels, to add some color into the image. Definitely want to add some blue. She kind of like adding yellow. Maybe we'll go with that instead. We'll see. I'll add a little bit of green to make it more like cyan, maybe. And then in the highlights, we'll see what we want to do. Maybe add some yellow. Yeah, I think that looks good. Add a little bit of yellow to the highlights. Maybe some red to make it more orangey. Just a tiny bit. And then see about the greens. Maybe a little bit of green. I like those changes. Let's see the before and after the curve. So very flat image, and then when we're after the curve, a lot more dynamic. I think some things that we're missing is the detail in these trees. They kind of disappear. So we're gonna go back to this initial curve, the RGB curve, and see if we want to try to save that. You can press this button and then hover over the location, and you can see where on the curves that is. So adjusting right here, it's going to adjust those trees a lot. So if you want to drop that down maybe and then pull up after those trees, yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Yeah, I think that's better. Add some vibrance into the image so we can see like the colors a little bit better, and we can take away from those in the HSL. There's not going to be much. It's just going to be mostly just blue, I think, in this image, but we'll just go through and check. Probably just cyan and blue. Even cyan is not doing too much. So it's mostly going to be blue. See if there's purple. No. So it's just going to be mostly blue. So we'll see what we want to do with this. Instead of adding saturation to the blue, since the image is mostly just blue, I'm going to bring up the vibrance instead. Maybe the saturation a little bit too. Just kind of choosing where I want my image to look. And I think it looks already pretty good. So no big adjustments need to be made. The cyan can definitely change the image a little bit. So we'll move the cyan towards green. Maybe drop the saturation and then up the luminance a little bit. But it's not really going to make that big of a difference. Now, let's see what we want to do in the color grading. You can add like a dark blue or even like a little bit of orange to like balance out the blacks and make them kind of colorless. Or add some blue to just add even more blueness. Kind of like how it is with the blacks being pretty colorless, a little blue already, and then so we don't have to change anything there. Let's go into the highlights, and I think yellow in the highlights is gonna make the image a little bit more dynamic. I like that. Maybe we want to balance it out by adding some blue in the midtones, maybe. Yeah, I think that looks good. Next, effects. I like dropping the dehaze since the image is already like super hazy, so we can accentuate that. Gonna want to up the clarity a little bit to make our tree line pop a little bit more, and I like the effect on the bottom here too. Actually gonna drop the texture, I think, and then I'll go into masks and add it back to like the tree line, our subject. Sharpening I usually up and then drop what it's affecting, so it's only affecting like our subjects. See how that's changing our image. Not really much, but definitely helps a little bit. And then masks is really going to be important for this to bring out our subject. So we're going to start with the radial gradients and just put it over our tree line here. And we're going to bring these out. Let's see if we want to maybe drop the blacks of them. Maybe bring out texture. Clarity is not making that big of a difference actually. Dehaze makes a big difference. I think it's a little bit oversaturated since it became darker, so we'll drop the saturation a little bit. Maybe even make it orange, a little bit orange, so that way it's more like white. No, I think that takes away from it a little bit. We'll keep it blue. Maybe expand it more. Yeah, I think that's better. I think that looks good for the subject. Definitely makes it pop a lot more. Let's see what we want to do with like around the image. So we can maybe darken this area some more. I actually think this mask might be a little bit extreme. I think it was mostly coming from the dehaze, so we'll drop the dehaze. Raise the saturation a little bit back up. Even that's a little bit too much. Okay, I like that more. See what this mask is doing. I think I like that too. Next, we can see if we want to add like light coming in from the top right, maybe. I think I like that, yeah. Maybe if it's yellow too, a little bit. And then there's this dark area in the top right. Kind of just want to remove that. We'll use the clone and just take this out. Oh, we need a bigger area. You can be generous because all the sky's basically the same, so that looks kind of obvious actually. We'll up the feather and do it again. There we go. Except for this little corner. Let's do that again. Alright, there you go. Completely gone now. One thing you can do is compare your image to a black background instead of white. And you can see that there's a large fade to these blacks. Maybe too much even. Oh, it's not really coming from this. So maybe if we drop the blacks down a little bit more, that could look better. Maybe add the fade back. And I think overall that image looks really nice. Quick edit, added a lot of blues, contrast to the image, and I think it looks really nice. So that's going to be the final edit. Thanks for watching.